Welcome back to the second hour of the show with no name for August 17th, 2012. By the way, today is my brother Tim's birthday. He's 58 today, I believe. He was born in 1954, January.
Your older brother.
My baby brother. Well, I got another younger brother who's an only child, but Tim was the baby of the family for 12 years.
Okay.
Yeah. He's the one who recently had some of the electronic equipment that he builds land on Mars.
Yeah, it's all on Facebook. That's
yeah, we read about that when we were in Scotland.
Yeah, that was pretty neat.
Yeah. We talked about birthdays. We'll diverge just for a moment. We went to Edinburgh Castle.
Yeah.
We're buying our tickets, and the gentleman says, "I don't want to offend you, sir, but do you want a discounted ticket?" And I said, "Why?" He says, "If you're 60, you got to have a discounted ticket." I said, "I'll take it." You know, I'd never been asked that before, and I wasn't offended. You know, less money.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, they should do that with the income tax. You know, the older you get, the less you should pay.
Well, let's see. I think truly one of the most hilarious experiences of my life was I think I was about, I don't know, 53 or something like that. And I'm driving Jamie back to college at RIT, and we get to like the last thruway stop before we go to Rochester. And I said, I need a cup of coffee. This is going to be a long day because I was driving out and driving back. So we stop at the McDonald's on the thruway, and I'm looking up at the stand, and it says, regular coffee, $1.08, large size, whatever they call it, $1.18, and it was like twice as much coffee. I said, "Wow, that's a good deal." Yeah, but I can't drink that much coffee. I said, "Give me a regular," to this pimply-faced 14-year-old kid who was behind the counter. I hand him a $5 bill, and I get like $4.40 change, and a receipt that says, "1 senior coffee." Didn't even ask. Jamie thought that was hilarious and couldn't wait to tell the rest. You know, before I got home, everybody in the family knew about it. So there we are. Well, anyway, our special guest today, first of all, Gavin Murdoch. I'm Bob Going, and Misha Murdoch, if you watch the first hour of the show, is our special entertainer today. And special guest, Vincent Stark, attorney at law, notary public, and otherwise fine fellow.
Thank you.
Former proprietor of Vincent's Restaurant in downtown Amsterdam when he was about 4 years old.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And recently, or I guess maybe currently, a member of the County Charter Commission, Montgomery County Charter Commission.
But not the most important member, that's you.
Well, thank you very much, but I don't think that's true. But nevertheless, a very active member. As a matter of fact, he did more work than all the rest of us put together, and I'm not kidding about that. I don't know whether we're still commissioners or not, because really our work is done. We turned in what we wanted to the county. There was some controversy about some of the things we did, one of which was the whether there should be an elected county treasurer or not. I had expressed the opinion that even though I thought, you know, appointed treasurer is not a bad idea, that electorally, I know from experience, it's one of those things that the public doesn't like being like that issue being taken away from them. They fight over things like elected constables and stuff like that. Elected highway superintendent. The towns some have elected highway superintendents, some don't. But don't try to take that away, or it's going to be tough. Unless they're really trying to get rid of somebody who's already there. Right. So anyway, that led to some interesting machinations at the Board of Supervisors this week, because there are some people on the Board of Supers. I could be wrong about this, but I get the impression that there were at least a couple members of the Board of Supervisors wanted to leave that provision in precisely so that the whole thing would go down, because they didn't like other aspects of it, but they wanted the public to be able to say they let the public vote on it. And then there was some last minute wrangling, and when the dust emerged, that provision was taken out. leaving only, taking out the most, I would say the most controversial part of it, making it at least possible that this thing is going to pass.
Well, I'll tell you that what I would say to that, I don't want to guess what was in the supervisor's
Well,
mind.
that's true. I am speculating to a certain extent.
Right. Well, certainly you know them better than I do. And
well,
maybe,
other than the one you live with.
Well, maybe not.
Maybe. I probably know him better than you too.
I'd rather not speculate on what goes on in his mind.
Right.
It's just not worth it. But I think the Charter Commission always intended that the charter would be broken up into several ballot propositions.
Yeah.
And we submitted it as one, really for simplicity's sake.
Right.
Figuring that the Board of Supervisors would exercise their power and, I'd say,
and
duty,
discretion
to break it up in a way that made sense. But very quickly, they decided not to.
Yeah.
Were you at the meeting on Monday?
I was not even aware of the meeting on Monday.
You didn't read the email?
I never got an email on that one. Yeah.
Well, I did get the email, and I couldn't
I
go, and Peter Capobianco couldn't go, but I think we all were of agreement and had you had certainly made your thoughts known about how it should be balloted, right? And we had made the decision as a commission not to make a recommendation on balloting.
Right.
Because
that's not our function.
That wasn't our function. We thought the supervisors should. But it became very clear when we met with them the Tuesday prior to the public hearing that they were looking for some guidance on that.
Yeah.
So Dusty Swanger, the chair of the commission, the president of FMCC, called another meeting, sort of informal. And like I said, I wasn't there. You weren't there. Capobianco wasn't there. I think pretty much everybody else was there. And it was sort of the consensus of the group that yes, we thought the treasurer should be balloted separately because they're such different questions.
They are. They're completely different questions.
And frankly, there were probably some other things that you could have pulled out. Eventually it gets too complicated. There's too many ballot propositions.
Right.
I know my father had said publicly that he favored pulling out the term limits because some of the supervisors were miffed about the term limits. Certainly, I think if you'd pulled term limits out, they would have passed with a huge percentage of the vote, and they would have been embarrassed about that. Even if the charter went down, we'd see that everybody would want term limits.
Right.
Right. That's
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, a separate proposition of the term limits might get more votes than
yeah.
Because everybody wants to term limit somebody else's supervisor.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what happened with that. And then as far as the machinations at the Board of Supervisors, I don't have very much insight on that. Probably about as
well, I've got less than you do because you were there and I wasn't.
Well, I would say to all of your listening audience or watching audience, you can watch it. You can watch it at the Montgomery County website now.
Is that right?
A resolution a couple months ago sponsored by Supervisor Jeff Stark of the 2nd Ward puts it up for public consumption via public access.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know the schedule offhand for the public access for that meeting. It won't be for a while because it's not a live feed, because that would have cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
But you can watch it on the internet. It's on our government YouTube channel, montgomery.co.ny.us, I think is the county website. But if you Google Montgomery County NY, that's what I always do. It'll pop up, and then it's somewhere right on there. You can watch the Board of Supervisors meeting. It was a long one, but a good one.
What fundamental argument can you make so people will vote in favor of this change? What's the importance of this change for the people of this county?
You want to go first?
Well, I think first we ought to outline what's changing. Much of county government is not changing at all by this charter. I mean, the charter has some length to it because we simply incorporated that which already is in charter form, the different divisions of the different offices and such. The main changes are there will be an elected county executive, much as we have a mayor and a common council. It would be an executive with a board of legislators. And that's the second big change. Instead of having the current form of the Board of Supervisors, you would have a Board of Legislators. and the town supervisors would continue to operate their towns, and a separate legislature would take care of county issues.
Anybody who's watching from the town, your town government will not change.
Right, not a bit. Nor will city government change a bit. I mean, I heard some of the aldermen complaining, oh, they're changing the borders of my ward. Well, no, we're not changing anybody's ward at all. You're going to have fewer legislative districts in the city than there are currently aldermen. But that just means those lines are going to be a little bit different, that's all.
Their separate offices are going to be elected from separate lines.
Right, as they already are. Now, on the issue of the county legislature, you got to look back really at the history of why we do things the way we do them now. Originally, take for example Montgomery County. Montgomery County was at one time a third of the state of New York, something like that. We went from here to the Canadian border and out and all the way west. I think. I think we went west as far as Buffalo, except we're occupied by the Indian tribes.
Right. Well, remember, of course, that there was a question of basically past Rochester of what was.
Well, yeah, what was New York and what wasn't.
So
that's true.
There was that.
But we went out that far.
As far as New York.
And as late as the 1830s, we were united with what is now Fulton County as one county. Now, in those days, the county was the basic form of government underneath the state. It was a unit of the state. And to the extent there were incorporated townships, those towns governed themselves. And maybe twice a year, the town supervisors would get together at the county seat and discuss any county issues. Now, there weren't a whole lot of county issues back in 1835 or 1800. There were, you know, do we build county roads or we don't? Well, even when we built county roads, what they would do is the people whose farms were next to the roads were owed so many days of work a year digging the ditches, and I mean, nothing was done. There were no county employees to speak of in those days, and they would, as I say, they'd meet a couple of times a year. Well, county government got more complex as the state grew and the counties got smaller. And, you know, they took over the social service functions and the sheriff's departments and all that stuff, none of which existed when the system was set up.
Well, I'd point out that the last time there was a major change in county government was, I think, the 1898 Constitution. And if you look at, the supervisors actually have their meeting books from the 1890s. And my father was looking through them one day. They weren't doing a whole heck of a lot even then. One of the more interesting things they were doing is like Jane Doe is judged by the Board of Supervisors to be an idiot and should go to the House for Idiots in St. Johnsville at county expense, you know, stuff like that, or sent to the mental ward in Utica, things like that. They were actually very brutal in their language choices back then. But again, not much going on. And
well, idiot was a term of art.
Right.
It literally was a medical term of art back in those days.
Certainly was.
Yeah, and there was county government was almost an afterthought. I mean, town government is where things happened. There was very little government going on. You had to have they had to have commissioners of elections and things like that. But the county clerk. But once they had those, they did their job and pretty independently. And the county clerk separately elected, the sheriff was separately elected, and all this stuff. There wasn't a lot for the Board of Supervisors to do. As I say, they got more complex, but what really made it complex is what seemed like a reasonable system in the 1700s and even 1890 became a lot more complicated when the Supreme Court of the United States passed down their one man, one vote rule, which said that even though the federal government can have legislative bodies that are not population related, i.e. the U.S. Senate,
right,
that because of the 14th Amendment, they deemed that state governments and local governments could not do that anymore. This affected the New York State Legislature immediately and dramatically, because formally every county in the state had an assemblyman. and the assemblymen were chosen by county, with the exception of Hamilton County, which never had an assemblyman. They shared one with Fulton County. So that whole system went out the window in the mid 60s, and it also affected everything down to the Common Council of Amsterdam and to the Board of Supervisors. Common Council of Amsterdam you used to have these huge wards like the 4th and the 6th, which were empty when they were created, and then became the bulk of the population later. All of a sudden had to be divided up into equal wards, which had never been. Which, when you think about it, certainly seems fair. There's no reason one alderman or one supervisor should have less power than another, or be representing more people. You know, town of Charleston, as tiny as it is, as unpopulated it is, had exactly the same vote as the town of Amsterdam on the Board of Supervisors. And it got even more complicated, because remember, when this system was set up, there was no city of Amsterdam. There was only the town of Amsterdam. The city didn't come in until 1885. And so then the state legislature says, okay, here's your charter, you've got 8 wards, you can have 8 supervisors. That had no more rhyme or reason than anything else, but think about it. Up to that point, the town of Amsterdam, which included the city, the population of the city, had 1 vote on the Board of Supervisors, with over half the population of the county. All right, so now they say, well, we can't do this, you can't do this anymore. So what do? You go, some counties went immediately to county legislatures and set up legislative districts, okay?
Most.
And there was actually no provision under state law at that point, but they had to do something. Others, like Montgomery County, developed a weighted voting system. That was challenged in court by, I think, in Warren County, it was, which is in our judicial district. And the decision in the Warren County case said, as a temporary measure, weighted voting is constitutional. That was the question, whether it was even constitutional to do that. Because you still got the guy in the town of Charleston, and I'm not picking on Charleston, it's just that it's so small with respect to everybody else, representing 49 people, whereas somebody else is representing 600 people. And on the committees, they still voted on. They didn't use weighted votes in committees in those days. I don't know if they do now.
They don't.
I don't. Which is weird. So at any rate, yes, as a temporary measure. That was 40 years ago. More than 40 years ago, that decision came down, and no one has challenged it since. But to reduce the argument to absurdity, or as we used to say in Latin class and probably in your contracts class, reductio ad absurdum, which you would probably
hear it over the bagpipes.
Couldn't overhear it with all the bagpipes in the background. Let us suppose for a moment that there is no city of Amsterdam. Let's suppose that the city of Amsterdam is abolished tomorrow, which the legislature could do. There's even a provision under the law for it to be done by the voters. Let's assume that, and let us assume the population figures from 1980, okay, as opposed to the current ones. In 1980, the combined weighted vote of the 5 Amsterdam supervisors and the town of Amsterdam supervisor contained more than 50% of the weighted vote of the Board of Supervisors. And in those days, those 6 people actually got together and controlled everything. Now let's assume the city is abolished tomorrow, and you no longer have 6 people working in concert, you have 1. Okay, the town of Amsterdam supervisor now has, say, 52% of the weighted vote of Montgomery County. The weighted vote system becomes absurd on its face when you think about that. And it's not a far-fetched thought. It could happen tomorrow. No one else needs to go to the Board of Supervisors meeting. The Town of Amsterdam supervisor will appoint the clerk of the board, will appoint the county attorney, will decide how much money is being spent, will decide debt issues, will decide who the, who the administrators of the various departments are, and everybody else can stay home. Their votes means absolutely nothing. So this, you're not getting rid of a system that the people ever approved in the first place. And, a lot of people, well, this is the way we've always done it. Well, no, it isn't the way we've always done it.
This is the way it happened.
The way it happened by accident. By the vote of 9 guys, or actually probably it was a 5-4 decision, by the vote of 5 guys in Washington, that's how we have the system we have now.
I think it was 7-2. That was Reynolds versus Sims.
What's that?
That was Reynolds versus Sims, right?
It was 65, 1965.
Baker versus Carr.
Because I remember, or it may even been 64, because I'm trying to think when the legislature switched. It was the first time that, let's see, how did that happen?
Wait, what's
No, 65. It was 65, because the Democrats took the New York State Senate, I think, for the first time in history in the 1964 election. In 65, one man, one vote came down, and they had to have a special election in 1965 with the new districts. Yeah. And the Republicans took control. So the Democrats were in control for 1 year. I remember that because my father was working down there at the time. There. So the answer is that's why we need legislative districts. So there's no good reason not to have them.
How's that going to affect me as far as taxes and programs?
Not at all, probably. No. However, on the executive issue, years ago, I served on the 77-78 Charter Commission when they first discussed these issues. Should we have an administrator? Should we have elected executive? All these things. It was the general consensus at that point that county government had gotten too complex to be handled part-time by a part-time Board of Supervisors. Mm-hmm. Our existing Board of Supervisors has both executive and legislative functions. So that every year they elect the chairman of the board who has extra powers.
Very few.
But he's part-time. And they decided then, this is not working. You can't, the department heads were just doing their own thing with really no oversight by much of anybody. And so they put in the administrator and had all these auditing functions and everything else so there was like one place where you could go where all this information was contained and there was some kind of continuity. Even the city of Amsterdam had a city administrator, even with an elected mayor. Mm-hmm. And so they tried that, and I recommended that at the time, but I had the famous going concurrence of 1978, wherein I said, I accept this as an interim measure, much like the courts accepted the weighted voting. I said, in the long run, this is not going to work, because now you're going to have an appointed administrator who serves at the pleasure of a shifting majority of the Board of Supervisors. The other thing is, if you don't like the way county government is running, the way it goes now, there's only one thing you can do, and that's vote against your own supervisor. That accomplishes usually nothing, unless there's a huge revolt countywide going on about a particular issue, like a Quarry Park back in the 70s, early 70s. But absent that, you can be really annoyed at the 5 people who appoint the the chairman of the Board of Supervisors and be absolutely unable to do anything about it. Whereas, if you have an elected county executive and you don't like what he's doing, everybody's got the same opportunity, and he's got to fight for everybody's vote. And when you have to fight for everybody's vote, not just the rotten borough where you're related to everybody, then that's a whole nother issue. You have to please the whole county, not just your town or your ward. And I think from a civic point of view, that's a far, far better power for the people to have than what they have now.
No,
right now they just blame everybody else. Oh, it's that guy's fault. Or I tried to do it, I couldn't do it because all these people were against me.
Which is often true.
It's always true.
But you know, from a civic point of view, it's even more interesting to move to a county executive and a legislature, because here's why. Even students of government, every high schooler knows that there's a separation of powers. There's an executive, a legislature, and a judicial branch, but we don't have that in Montgomery County. And you'd be surprised how many people who vote in these elections have no idea that that's the case. Have no idea that's the case.
Probably a majority.
What's that? Probably a majority. I don't know. I haven't asked the majority, but it's possible. So now you're going to have a system that mirrors the governor system, the presidential system we have. It's eminently understandable. It's not something I need to spend hours explaining to someone.
Yeah, we're not creating a parliament.
All right, it's not like we've come up with some novel system. I mean, this is done everywhere in the United States. This is our system. So now it's more comprehensible to people. Now, I've always felt that county government is completely non-transparent. Right?
Completely.
It's completely non-transparent because you don't understand who controls what.
Darn near opaque. It's not even translucent.
You're right. It is darn near opaque. There are departments that are controlled by one supervisor. There are departments that are controlled by a group of supervisors. There are department heads that have terms that are longer than the Board of Supervisors. There are department heads who have terms of 2 and 4 and 6 years. And so if they don't like the current Board of Supervisors, they can wait them out.
Yeah.
They can wait them out. So who controls what departments? I have no clue. And my father's been a supervisor for 8 months now. I mean, the fact of the matter is you've got 15 part-time supervisors, all of whom have some sort of executive function. Technically, they only have that executive function in concert,
However,
technically. But there are cases where supervisors have gone to department heads and told them to do things, and
oh, absolutely.
Then the supervisor has to say, how many weighted votes does this person have?
Right.
How many friends do they have? You know, is this going to cost me my job? It puts the department heads in a really awful position. Speaking of which, how many department heads are there? The personnel director says 21. I think the personnel chair says 24. It's somewhere in between there. But nobody can give me a straight answer.
Yeah, you can't even get a straight answer on something as simple
pretty
as that.
convoluted
You have
system.
this 15-headed Hydra with 21 to 24 arms, depending on the day, like Vishnu. It's truly the definition of a Leviathan. Okay, I mean, it's a $93 million budget now. Okay, if you add up, I did this. I added up the city budget, all the budgets from all the towns, all 10 of them, all the budgets from all the villages, and there's 10 of them, and it adds up to $60 million. County government is huge and completely under the radar because people don't understand it. The press has trouble understanding it. Even if they do understand it, and I'm not saying they don't, it's difficult to report on because how do you report the Board of Supervisor meetings, right? It's easy enough to report on an executive. They attract attention from the media. Suddenly, county government is really answerable to the people because people will know about it.
You have a face attached to it.
Will the change eliminate some of the redundancy that exists within the county as a whole?
I think ultimately it will. We kind of figure that on a strict dollar-for-dollar basis, the charter itself isn't going to cost any more. Or any less. You're eliminating I forget six legislative salaries. What do we end up with? Nine legislators.
9 legislators.
9 legislative districts. You're saving $60,000 there. Most of that's going to go to the administrator, but the administrator is going to be taking over functions that are currently held by junior functionaries, and we always had an administrator and a deputy administrator. And ultimately that fell apart because they had to answer to 15 different people.
You know, the way I explain to people with the money is, let's say we pay our county executive $150,000, which is ridiculous. I can't imagine anybody. I can't imagine we would pay him that. But let's say we do. And then we give him a secretary, and we pay her $50,000. Ridiculous. Why would we pay a secretary that much for this? But let's say we did it. That's $200,000 minus the $60,000 that we saved, minus another $10,000 we saved by making the county executive the budget officer.
Right.
So then we're down to 130.
No, much less than that. Yeah.
What's 200,000?
You're down to about
70?
80 at that point.
Minus 70,000.
Yeah. 130.
130. Thank you. That's $130,000. Now I think he's going to save that in efficiencies. I think he's going to save that by really being able to hold the department heads to the fire, because he's going to be in charge of the budgeting process. It's an executive budgeting process, and he's going to say, no, you don't need that much money. No, you don't need that much money.
He's going to
I'm
have
not
the power
asking
to do
for
that.
Yes, he'll have a line item veto over the budget. I think he'll save us some money there, and in a couple of years, when he sees what those redundancies are, he can suggest consolidating departments. And nobody in county government currently has that broad view. Nobody can keep track of all the departments and say, oh no, that one and that one.
No, they're all doing their own thing.
Consolidated.
They're all, and central purchasing and all that stuff. It's crazy. It's a crazy quilt.
We have some really weird things that we do. For instance, our Department of Public Works handles the mail. Right? I don't know why. It's some historical oddity. We kept that in the charter, for now anyway.
Yeah, we kept everything.
If it makes sense to put that someplace else in 5 years, maybe they will. If it makes sense to keep it that way, they will. But there'll be somebody up at the top who's answerable to the voters, and when taxes go up, they're going to blame him. So he has this vested interest in efficiency. I think we can save $100.
There is no real oversight at this point.
There is no oversight.
There really isn't.
It just happens.
Sometimes you have a crackerjack, really active chairman of the board, and he'll be there for a year, and then it'll be somebody else. Here's an anecdote, and this is a true story of county government. And a friend of both of ours, Bob Reedy, whose grandchildren are in the band with Misha, the Perry kid's grandfather. Bob Reedy was made Commissioner of Social Services in the late 70s, early 80s, something like that. And he comes in on his first day and has a general meeting with anybody in I guess with everybody. Everybody, all the employees of the department. He had gathered together to introduce himself, blah, 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 blah. And then at the conclusion of his little talk, he said, now, I want everybody to go back to work except for those people who currently report directly to the commissioner.
There's nobody left.
Hardly anybody left the room. Everybody reported directly to the commissioner. There was no chain of command. Everybody was doing their own thing. And so, you know, he then broke it down into 4 or 5 people. Okay, you're in charge of this group, this group, this group, and this. You know, but these things just develop over a period of time, and as they take on more and more functions, it gets more and more chaotic. And you just need to have one person say, look, this is how we got to do things. This is crazy that you didn't, you know, personnel director does this and that.
You absolutely need that with a $93 million budget. There's a lot of money going on.
Yeah, there is.
And somebody, I'll tell you, one of the more silly things I've heard about the charter is it eliminates the checks and balances of county government. It
does exactly the opposite.
Exactly.
It sets up checks and balances.
There are no checks and balances currently. The Board of Supervisors is essentially infallible.
Right, the way it is now. They write checks and there's no balance.
There's no balance
in the budget.
And
like the school board.
That hurts. That hurts.
But the old school board.
Under the system we've set up, there is a check and a balance. There's a bunch of checks and balances. There's the veto. There's the override. Those are checks and balances. It really indicated a fundamental misunderstanding of checks and balances to me.
And the other one is they're setting up another layer of government. No, we're not setting up another layer of government at all. As a matter of fact, you know, you're going to have a legislature just like you have a legislature now.
And I'll tell you, there was somebody who said that at the public hearing on Tuesday to the Board of Supervisors, and I was just, my jaw almost hit the floor. It's like, They're sitting in front of you. There's the layer of government. We're just replacing that layer with another, more efficient layer. We're taking one, we're getting rid of it, and we're replacing it. It doesn't create, it doesn't add one.
Yeah, and I don't know, and then people are, of course, nobody really knows, as you say, I said it's opaque, you said it's not transparent, but in any event, people don't understand how county government works, so people really think that somehow we're adding $9,000-$10,000 salaries to county. No, they're already paid that, and the supervisors get paid two checks, one from their towns and one from the county, and the Amsterdam supervisors only get the one salary because they're only legislators. So right now we got a part legislator and part legislator executive board of supervisors. I mean, no one would create the system if you were starting from scratch. You would not create. There's no way. This would be on the top of the list how to do it. There's no way you would create the system that exists now and say this is the way we should do things. No way.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. I'll tell you, Shane Walters, who I like, who I respect, and who my father gets along very well with. He is one of the prime opponents of the charter. And he said, I believe at the debate after the public hearing, or maybe it was during the meeting with the commission, that he wasn't sure the commission fully understood county government. Checkmate. You just gave it away. Of course, yes, maybe we don't fully understand county government. Here, there will be a charter that anybody who wants to can read. It's maybe it's less than 30 pages, I think, at this point. I mean, we really did our best to. Well, I'll tell you, the county charters vary from maybe 20 pages. I think that's Herkimer County, which basically just replaced the Board of Supervisors with the legislature under court order, to Westchester or Suffolk County, 120, 130 pages. And we made the decision early on that this should be comprehensible and readable to somebody with an average intelligence and a high school degree.
Well, we got a chance.
So there's that. And then the other thing that Shane said that really struck me was it currently takes forever to fix problems. And then he went on to describe some of the problems, which were basically communication issues, minor problems, really, really small problems, not the big picture problems that the county has. And he said, oh yeah, it took me 2 or 3 months to fix that one, but we're slowly but surely fixing that. I know what the problems are and I can fix them given enough time. Well, he's already halfway through his tenure.
He's more than halfway, yeah. He's 3/4, 2/3 of the way through his term. Yeah.
I've never been great with math. I went to Amsterdam High School.
Well, I'm just...
But you're great in social studies.
I am great with social studies.
And you went to Amsterdam High School.
And I went to Amsterdam High School. But yeah, he's almost done. I don't know who the chairman is next year. I'd say John Thayer's next in line. There are some people who are not happy with that. We'll see. We'll see who the chairman is. Whomever it is might not want to communicate the same way Shane Walters thinks that somebody should communicate to solve the problems. So then we're back to square one. This is a permanent solution.
Tell me about Herkimer County, because I didn't realize that they created a legislature under court order. Because they're in a different department.
It's Herkimer County or Hamilton County. I get those two confused. Which one's smaller?
Well, Hamilton is virtually non-existent.
It might be.
It's probably Herkimer.
Then.
Yeah, it must be Herkimer.
It's actually interesting that the Department of State did not have their charter on file. But it seems to be in operation and nobody seems to mind. It's a very small charter and it creates I think a 9-member legislature, which has essentially the powers of the Board of Supervisors plus whatever powers you get by becoming a legislature. That was in 67 maybe?
That would be about right, sure.
And it says at the beginning, this charter is created pursuant to a court order. I couldn't find what case that was. I don't have Lexis access at the moment. But that's also what the Department of State told me. And it was actually, I read all the county charters, and that's the only one I couldn't find. So I called the Department of State, and they sent it. They said, you know, it took some digging, but it turns out somebody sent it to us by an email a couple years ago. And the last time they amended it, as best I can tell, was '91, where they put in sort of an independent redistricting process. You remember the first independent redistricting process I brought, and we put it off?
Oh yeah.
And then it was changed a lot. I think we actually got it a lot better. I based that on Herkimer counties, but you know, it's pretty simple. Here are the powers.
See what you're saying now makes some sense, because there was probably no provision under state law whatsoever dealing with a situation of replacing a board of supervisors with a legislature, even though the Supreme Court ordered it. So they had to do something. So they did it themselves, and that's as good a reason as any when there's no other guidance.
Now, when this goes to the voters, simple majority?
I think
Two
it is.
simple majorities.
It's two separate majorities, one from the city and one from the towns taken as a whole.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
That's correct. That's under municipal home rule law, the county charter.
Blah 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 blah. And you can look it up.
You can look it up.
And if Vinny gets me the site before I put this on the video, I'll post it on the screen while we're talking about it.
Okay.
Ooh.
All right.
Okay. I can do that. But it's pretty simple. Pretty simple.
Now, after all your explanations, do you think it can be explained to the people in the county well enough to get a thumbs up?
Well, assuming they all watch the show.
What is going to be done to promote the passage of this coming up to the election?
Beats me. This is when we start here, I guess. And I guess that's it. I mean, you got to do the talk shows and the interviews, and we do have the support of the recorder, which is good, because they're a big part of it.
They watch, right?
What?
Yeah.
The recorder watches the show.
All the time.
They're the first one to take a subscription to it before we even offered subscriptions.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Well, they're on the right side of this one.
Okay.
Yes, they are, and they seem to have absorbed it pretty well too.
Yes. I've been very impressed by the reporter. I have been.
My little princess is poking her head here. Looks like she wants to go swimming.
Oh, makes sense.
We are, by the way, in the backyard of Casa Bob, on our beneath our pergola, I guess.
Ooh.
I don't know if you can see.
Did you build this pergola yourself?
We're not going to talk about that. No, the answer is no. No, this is just kind of a
Something.
exercise in former trees.
Where'd you get the bricks from?
Craigslist.
Craigslist?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, we have a patio in my backyard, sort of a bistro style thing. I came home from Syracuse one day and there was a patio in my backyard. I said, where'd this come from? It's like I put it in. But several years before that, they tore down one of the Mohasco buildings.
Yeah.
And they were getting rid of the bricks. They were hauling them away. So my father, we went over and we were like, hey, can we have some of these bricks? Hey, go ahead. And he made me load all these bricks onto the truck. And so now one of the Mohasco buildings is my patio.
Very good.
Yeah. Works out real well. Sorry.
This one actually used to be somebody's fireplace chimney. I don't think it did come from Craigslist. I think it was a friend of Jamie's.
Okay.
There's like 500 something bricks here.
Really?
Because I stacked them up myself. Yeah. Where'd the princess go?
She's going to where the food is.
All right.
But to answer your question, I don't think anything's planned, formally yet. Hopefully there will be. But it's just a matter of the Charter Commission getting it out and explaining it to people, one-on-one, or in small groups. What I'd like to see is, and I understand political people used to do this more often, church groups, civic organizations,
Sure.
anybody who will take me, I will come and I will explain it to them line by line if they want, because it's really a sorely needed change.
Seniors groups.
Seniors groups, anybody who will take me. I'll go into people's living rooms if they want. I don't care. All politics is local, especially local politics. Right?
Very good.
Well, the arguments against it, first of all, have not been sound. And a lot of it's straw man arguments. They're complaining about stuff that actually isn't even in the charter. Somebody complained the other night that we're setting up a dictator by having an executive. But it's not
really very standard.
It's no
town.
different from their town. I mean, they're voting for the same guy. Let's just say, well, we'll say Shane Walters, because we'll just say Shane Walters. Shane Walters gets elected the supervisor of the town of Charleston, right?
Mm-hmm.
He is their executive. He is the mayor of Charleston, and he has a council, right? But he's the executive of the town of Charleston. They elected him. Nobody's saying what we just elected a dictator for our town.
No.
Right? It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same thing. You know, except you give them a different hat and send them to the Board of Supervisors as well.
I'll say, for instance, one of the criticisms we got for why it's a dictator is the executive appoints with the consent of the legislature.
Whoa, Mary Rose, come on in, come on in, come on in.
The executive appoints department heads with the consent of the legislature, but he can fire them without the consent of the legislature.
Mm-hmm.
Grab some chairs.
And some of the Board of Supervisors didn't like that. I was confused why. It's a very standard way of doing it. I read all 21 county charters. I couldn't find one where they did it differently. That's not how it's done at the state. That's not how it's done at the federal level. You know, you serve at the pleasure of the president, the governor, the county executive, the mayor in Amsterdam, right? She could fire the county attorney at any time, or the city attorney at any time.
No, she can't.
Why not?
Trust me, I looked it up. Became an issue at one point.
Well, I'm sure there are some people.
They're appointed coterminously. That's why.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
By the way,
That's
we
true.
off camera we have the official undertaker of the show with
Yes.
no name, Pete Rose, and we have
Not the
there goes little Jack. All right, come on in. You can come in.
I'll say
all right.
hey.
Okay.
I'll come stand in the back here.
Oh, okay.
It's an interesting structure you have here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not talking about it. Okay. Anyway, so what's new, Pete?
Nothing. Big 5K tonight.
Yes, there is. There's a 5K in Canajoharie tonight.
Are you going to be a spectator or a participant?
I will be a participant.
Really? It's all
the-
downhill both ways?
Apparently, well,
He's
Let-
gonna,
let me just.
he's mad at me.
Now, I think I've been bamboozled a little bit. Don't you guys like live on a hill?
Yeah,
Yes.
we do.
Yeah. So my daughter Anna, who ropes me into this 5K here, you know, being the athletic type that I am. By the way, it's billed as a 5K
Fun
run/walk. All right. So she says to me, it's okay. It's downtown Canajoharie. Everything's flat. You know, you should be okay with it. And then she says, and afterwards we're going to have a barbecue at the Rose's house, and they live at the funeral home in Canajoharie. Now I've been there. I've been to their house. Okay, and I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking, okay, that's nice. And then Mrs. Rose mentions, don't worry, you'll be running right past our house. You can stop and rest. And of course, I'm thinking maybe they got something else in mind for me once I reach her house. And then I start thinking, well, wait a minute. If I'm running in the flat 5K, how do I end up at the Rose's house up on the hill?
Pretty good observation.
Yeah, and that's, you know, 7 years of higher education does
You can't
those
get
things.
anything past you.
No. Well, they did. They already got me signed up for this thing. So, so on Wednesday of this week, today's Friday.
Yeah.
Was it Wednesday? No, Tuesday.
Uh-huh.
Tuesday, went shopping to the shoe store in that new section of the Target Plaza there, Super Shoes or whatever the heck it is, and got a pair of running shoes. Fit beautifully.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like having mercury on your feet.
Have you used them yet?
Yes, on Wednesday, Anna and I went out and ran on the bike path on the south side.
Run. What? Define your word. Your definition
Define
of
my
the word run.
terms.
Yeah, your term. Of
well,
run.
I'd dash for about 30 or 40 paces,
And then you stop.
and then I'd
Stop.
go like
Stop and
this.
catch his breath. His breath to catch up with him. Yeah.
Of course, I had an RN with me with advanced CPR training at all times, and periodically she would check my pulse.
That's-
Okay, and the goal was to get from the bridge over the South Chuctanunda as far as the lock, the guy parked lock
Yeah.
12 or 11 or
About a
whatever
mile and a half.
past Hoover Avenue, your ancestral
Yep.
home. And so that was the goal, and then turn around and come back. So that's about a mile each way, more or less, depending on where you park your car.
Yeah.
And I've walked that many times, so it really wasn't a problem getting back to my car as such. I will say that I dash 30 or 40 paces, kind of waltz slowly for another 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 minutes, and then run a little bit again. And this is our dog Chip.
Hi, giant, terrifying
All right,
dog.
sit,
Just roll on me.
sit. Okay, good dog.
This is the first time I wore this suit.
Oh wow.
Robbie, he just drank out of that mug.
Yeah, okay. You drank out of my mug. All right. Anyway, so eventually I got back to the car.
Chippy.
Careful, Rock. Anyway,
Sorry. No, that's fine.
all right, sit, Chip. Good dog. Roll over. So anyway, we made it back. And yesterday I went out again. This time I took Chip. This poor dog.
Poor dog,
Look at the size of him.
He's like
Still
a big
feeling from the
grizzly
run.
He
bear.
couldn't keep up with me. He could not keep up with me whatsoever.
It's like
This
a
is
big
the first
grizzly
time
bear.
he's actually walked since yesterday morning.
He's like a big grizzly bear.
I kept saying, "Come on, Chip! Come on, Chip!" And he's going, right? Sit.
The other leg.
Good dog. All right. So eventually we get back to that. I did much better yesterday. It wasn't nearly as painful, and I did it much faster.
What time is your run?
6 o'clock
6
tonight.
o'clock.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock
There's a lot
tonight.
of-
So what time?
Somewhere in Canajoharie. I don't even know where we're going. Do you know where it starts?
Erie Boulevard.
Erie Boulevard, where the former Erie Canal.
Yes.
Right. At what part of Erie Boulevard?
9. Which I believe is the youth center
Which is downtown, right?
across from the museum.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Okay. So then we run, and then we go up to a hill, and then we.
And then it's kind of a
Pete,
zigzag between Otsego and Walnut
Pete, you didn't bring your measuring tape.
up on the hill. Oh, I don't need it.
Okay. All right.
all
Just
about
curious.
I ball
But-
how long they are.
But then you
Oh,
go down
okay.
there's a downhill,
Yeah.
and then it's out the bike path and back.
All right. Well, that's flat.
So that's
All right.
so they're just a small.
Well, it starts uphill. Is that the idea?
Yeah, Erie Boulevard up 10
Oh.
to Otsego, around Walnut, and then down again.
Well, I'll tell you, I watched a 5K the other day. The first guy got done in 17 minutes, something like that, which I was very impressive.
So this 5K, the 5 clicks, right? What is that? It's communist measure, some kind of
Yes, it is.
communist.
Yeah.
What is that in real? 3.2 miles. Okay.
Roughly.
3.2 miles.
The high school cross country race.
All right.
They mentioned that you want the other way.
I think you need to get in a little closer. I don't see it.
There's a yeah, you got a champion over here. She was the winner at the last 5K for her age category.
Who's that?
Mary.
She was.
Yeah.
Well, I figure I should do pretty well in my weight category.
But you might be the only one in your age category too to be running.
Could be.
So you're going no matter what.
I'm going to go. I'm going to start, and I'm going to finish. I don't care. We may not be able to do a show next week because I might not be done yet. But yeah, I mean, I can do 3.2 miles one way or another.
That's more than I could do.
I was surprised, let me tell you, the shoes feel great, the feet feel great. Boy, there's a lot of parts of the rest of me that were,
Didn't have enough shoes.
I had the back surgery several years ago, and I was kind of giving that a pounding while I was out doing this. And there were parts of my legs I noticed that
I didn't notice
never
before.
noticed before.
Yeah. To remind you how many parts we're made of.
Yeah, we are made of a lot of parts, some of which are useful, some of which are only useful when you're doing 5Ks, apparently. I don't know, I guess in the olden days. Anyway. So, Gavin, you look a little skeptical about this whole charter issue. Right?
My skepticism skepticism is only in the fact that we may not get enough people to vote in favor of it.
Yeah. Well, if
You know,
we do, we
because-
do. We don't, we don't. And they can't complain if they don't like it afterwards.
But you know, this would be a good step towards getting rid of the redundancies countywide. Now, how many police departments do we have
Oh,
in
my
the
God.
county? You know, how many highway departments? You know, so how much money is getting spent that could be better utilized, given back to the pockets of the taxpayers in the county?
We got
Because
village
we-
highway departments, town highway departments, the city highway department, a county highway department. And I think I've told you that great story about the fellow who lives just outside the village of Fultonville. I ran into him in a coffee shop one day, and he says, "I work in Johnstown. I work in the city of Johnstown." He says, and he told me where he lived, literally just over the line outside the village of Fultonville, out on Route 38. He says, "On my way to work," he says, I live in the Glen Fire District. So I pass through the jurisdiction of the Glen Fire Department, the Fultonville Fire Department, the Fonda Fire Department, the town of Mohawk Fire Department, the town of Johnstown Fire Department, and the city of Johnstown Fire Department. 6 fire departments in his 5-mile drive to work every day.
Yeah, Mohawk really gets hit with fire districts. There's a map on the county website.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the town of Mohawk itself has 5 days, but we're just talking a straight line to the city of Johnstown. Now that's crazy, and they're all fully equipped, and they all got the station house here, and they all got very active political volunteer fire departments.
And how many other jurisdictions we have that we're actually paying for out of our tax money that you drive through?
You got separate sewer districts up county. You got all kinds of stuff. School districts, frankly.
Yeah.
There are a lot of school. You'd be surprised how many school. You wouldn't be surprised how many school districts there are in the county. Ones I've just never heard of that have just a tiny bit of the county.
Cherry Valley.
Cherry Valley is one of them. Owen
D. Young.
Owen D. Young.
Out of the backside of Fort Plain.
And there's one school district that takes a small square of the northeastern part of the county, and nobody lives in it. Nobody lives in the part that's
Glenville.
it's Glenville.
That's either Scotia or Galway would have that one.
Well, that's it. It's Galway.
Yeah.
And
Galway.
no one lives in it.
Not in that part of the county. If somebody built a house there, that's where their child would go, I suppose. But
yeah.
But that's where they pay their taxes.
that's where they would pay their
Yeah, I
taxes.
know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Gotta get rid of these, as you say, the layers.
One time I got sent down to Otsego Family Court to sit for a month. And I was very well taken care of and welcomed there. I got VIP passes to the Hall of Fame and stuff like that. But the clerk says to me, "Where is Montgomery County? I never heard of it." I said, "Well, actually it's adjacent to Otsego County." A small portion of it, but yeah. You know, in fact, I passed through that small portion on my way here. Through Sprout Brook to Cherry Valley. Yeah, past the Sprout Brook General Store and the birthplace of Henry Kaiser. Do you know that?
No, I don't know who Henry Kaiser was, that I should not know who he is.
Henry Kaiser?
Kaiser Aluminum?
Kaiser Aluminum, Kaiser Steel, Kaiser Auto Company, Kaiser something health plan. That Henry Kaiser. Henry Kaiser, who Franklin Roosevelt put in charge of industrial production of the country during World War II and invented the Liberty ship. He'd never built ships before, but he put together a shipping plant that built Liberty ships, and some of the Liberty ships became escort aircraft carriers that Uncle Si served on. Yeah.
That guy.
That Henry Kaiser.
Okay, sorry.
Born in Sprout Brook, Montgomery County, New York. And there's a little plaque outside the house. Almost to Otsego County. You can literally see Otsego County. Actually, you can see Otsego County from here.
That actually reminded me. He came up in the Charter Commission. Do you remember that?
Henry Kaiser did?
No. Mr. Murdoch did.
Huh?
Mr. Murdoch.
Oh.
We were talking about legislative districts.
Yeah.
And the thing with 9 legislative districts is the city won't have legislative districts that are entirely within. There are 3 that are entirely within the city, and then there's a 4th that includes part of it. And actually, there's a fifth. The town of Florida took basically windswept drive.
Okay.
And some of the commissioners and some of the public were saying, oh, well, nobody would ever vote for, people in the towns won't ever vote for somebody who lives in the city. We do it all the time. We do it all the time with our school board.
That's right.
Mr. Murdoch won.
The town of Florida.
Won the town of Florida.
You did, didn't you?
And,
Yeah.
Did you? Did
You
you
didn't
get
come
the
up first,
I
but
think-
you
I think
certainly
Steve
finished in the
I
top
think
2.
skipped him, yeah.
Well, you
Well,
came
better
in
than being
first in the
top
town
three.
of Amsterdam.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not anything strange.
Because people feel that when you change things, the identity that you possess disappears. You know, which is the argument they're always given for school districts. Well, you know, if Wells and Lake Pleasant merge, Lake Pleasant's going to lose their identity. You know, Galway and Ballston Spa merge, you know, Galway's going to lose its identity. You know, their existence is predicated upon the community in which they live in. If that community doesn't have something, the community will no longer be there.
And I'm certainly sympathetic to that argument, which is why when we did the legislative districts, and that took us so long. It was hard to please everybody. And I don't think everybody's perfectly pleased. I'm not perfectly pleased. I don't know if anybody's perfectly pleased, but we all voted.
But I still think the last answer we came up with was the best one we came up with.
Right.
We worked a little longer, might get a little fine-tuned, but who cares? You know,
But
the
one of the
general
things,
line.
one of the things we tried to do was to use the school districts as sort of a guide, right? Because we had to cross town lines.
Right.
Well, the school districts already do.
Yeah, if we can't keep the towns together, at least try to keep them in the same school district. They all go to the same schools. They know each other from Little League. You know, we try to
Right.
find the
I saw
community,
that- read that argument
the
in the
communities of interest.
And if you can keep the town together, great.
Yeah.
But if you can't, then you have to look at other lines, other ways of doing it.
And that's what we did. I mean, and I think there were, if you're going to make them equal, which you really have to do,
You have to.
one way or another, then you got to make those little compromises.
You know, that's not unlike, you know, the founding of the nation, where people identify themselves more as a New York Stater than as a
No.
USer.
Right.
You know, and people from Tennessee were Tennesseans as opposed to people who live in the United States. And over time, that identity is kind of waned, and now you.
As Patrick Henry said, I am an American. That's right.
And actually that's the other part I wanted to point out too is there are a lot of counties that we can look at their experience and see, did they lose their identity? Herkimer County's towns have not lost their identity. Schenectady County has a legislature. They haven't lost their identities. Nobody says what district they come from.
And of course, for those of us who live in the city, it's even a ridiculous argument,
It is.
because what are the issues of the Third Ward before the Board of Supervisors that differ substantially from those of the Fourth Ward or the Fifth Ward, or for that matter, the town of Amsterdam or the town of Florida?
You know, maybe within the town or within the city of Amsterdam, the Third Ward and the Fourth Ward have somewhat different issues. Maybe crime is not so big in the First Ward,
Yeah,
but in the Fourth
on the
Ward,
county
it's
level,
No.
not at all.
No. And that's the other part of it is breaking those towns up, breaking the city up. It makes people think what's best for the county
Globally.
And they're not doing that right now. I mean, when people in the towns vote for their town supervisors, I haven't asked them, but my suspicion is they're voting based on what's going on in the town. The county, again, is an afterthought.
And here's another thing: why are there five supervisors from the city on the Board of Supervisors? Because the city said so in the city charter. We used to have 8 members of the Board of Supervisors, so they were paying 8 salaries. Tomorrow, the city of Amsterdam, if it wanted to, could say, we are, from now on, we are going to have 20 members of the Board of Supervisors, and the county would have to pay each of them the $10,000 salary. And that's ridiculous that the city should have the power to do that. If you have uniform districts of a reasonable number, and I think 9 is a reasonable number, then go for it. Go for it.
Hope it passes.
So too.
I think it'd be a step in the right direction for a lot of.
I don't know how these Canada area
Jurisdictions.
residents think about that, but
We're forgotten. We're on the tip.
You're not forgotten.
You live in the pot that washes itself. I mean, you don't have to do any work up there.
That's right.
You know.
That's right.
Oh. I mean, we had the Charter Commission had a public hearing about it at Canajoharie Village Hall. Or was it the town hall? Or was it the village hall?
I believe it was at the village hall. I wasn't there.
At the Canajoharie Village Hall. And we didn't need to do that, by the way. We had 3 public hearings, none of which were required by law. The only public hearing that was required was the Board of Supervisors when it went up as a local law. And certainly we went there, and people told us what they thought, and we were responsive to it.
Yeah, we ought to have 5 or 6 more explanation meetings from this point on, too.
That would be nice.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that.
We should.
I vote aye.
Well, we don't have.
I vote Dusty has to set it up.
I'm sure Dusty will appreciate that.
Where are you going?
There, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a. You can't see it on camera, but there's a pool right over there, and
It looks quite appetizing.
I'd much rather go in the pool.
Push it down. There you go. Well, I don't want to end this lovely discussion because I think it's an important discussion we're having here today about the. But I gotta go to work.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah?
So you're gonna go to work.
Yeah, I suppose.
But I think,
Yeah, I got to go to work too. I got court this afternoon. I think I got a trial this afternoon. Yeah.
I
So
think-
you
I
wanna
think
come
this-
along?
You think you have a trial this afternoon? You haven't done any preparation or anything like that?
Well, I just got hired a couple of days ago.
Oh, okay.
you can adjourn it till you get pressed.
No, I can't adjourn it. No, but I know the issues. All right, there's only like one issue in the case. So it either works or it doesn't. I'm not. I'm defending, so I don't have to do too much. It's a civil matter.
That's where we are, and
I think it's a great thing. I think it's something that's important. It's been needed for a long time, and I think it can set the standard for other jurisdictions to look at to try to
say
make
it
things more
louder.
efficient.
Didn't you have like 1,000 votes in your election? Say it louder for those 1,000 people who voted for you.
I think when you go out to vote on this issue about the charter, I think you need to vote affirmative. Because if we don't start someplace, we're going to be stuck in the same rut we've been in for too long. And the only thing that happens
Frankly,
when you're
this
stuck
is-
in a rut for too long, it gets deeper and harder to get out of.
This may be the only opportunity in our lifetimes to do this too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And certainly county government has spun out of control over the last several decades.
As all governments
Yep.
have. They become more self-serving than serving.
Okay, here we go. Gavin and I will be back again next week. Pete, I'll see
Maybe.
you tonight. And
Thank you for having
Jenny,
me.
I'll see you in court or whatever. And hopefully we'll be, assuming I don't need the services of Mr. Rose, we'll be back again next week with more of the show with no name.